I moved into a rental cabin last winter. No neighbors. No traffic. Just silence. At least it used to be silent. It was supposed to be a quiet break, just a few weeks away from the city. The cabin sat at the edge of the woods, about 40 minutes from the nearest store. The first nights were calm. Snow fell softly outside, and the wind creaked the wood. But by the fourth night, I started hearing something else. Soft, deliberate footsteps moving around the porch, slow and steady. When I checked, nothing was there. At first, I thought it was an animal, but it always happened at the same time, 2:47 a.m., never earlier, never later. I set up my phone to record the sound. When I listened back, I heard the footsteps again, but also something else. Breathing. Slow. Deep, like someone standing just beneath the microphone. And a voice whispered, "Are you awake?" I told myself it was the wind or maybe the cabin settling. But the next night, I stayed up and waited. Around 2:40, the air got heavy. Still, even the forest stopped moving. Then it came again. Footsteps, crunching through snow. Slow, careful. This time, they didn't circle the cabin. They stopped right beneath my bedroom window. I grabbed my flashlight, ran to the window, and flashed the light outside. Nothing. Just trees and snow falling gently. But when I turned the flashlight off, I could still see it. A shape standing perfectly still at the edge of the tree's black against white snow watching me. I blinked, and it was gone. The next morning, I found footprints in the snow, leading straight to the porch and stopping beneath my window. No footprints leaving. I called the local sheriff. He looked around and said it was probably an animal or a prank. But that night, the steps came again. Only this time, they were inside. I froze. The sound came from the hallway-light steps, slow, like someone barefoot on old wood. I locked my door, sat on the floor, and held my breath. Then I heard it again breathing, right outside my door, and then a whisper. "You can't hear me if you don't move." I stayed still for nearly an hour, listening to it circle the room, until the sound faded into nothing. At sunrise, I packed my things and drove to a motel in town. When I came back a week later with a friend to collect the rest, we noticed something odd. The snow around the cabin was untouched, except for one trail of footprints. They led from the woods to my car and stopped right beside the driver's side window. Beneath the glass, someone had drawn a single word in the frost, listening. I never went back, but sometimes late at night, I still wake up, not to a sound, but to the feeling that something's standing just outside my window, waiting for me to move. I rented a cabin up north last December. I'd been working too much, needed quiet, snow, and space to breathe. The listing said, "Private lake access. 2 cabins. 1 available." I asked about the other one, but the owner just said, "It's been locked up for years." Don't worry about it. That should have been my first warning. The drive took nearly 4 hours. By the time I arrived, snow had started falling, big, slow flakes drifting through the pines. The cabin was small but warm, everything wooden and simple. No cell service, no neighbors, just silence and the creak of the dock frozen into the bay. The first night, I unpacked, lit the fireplace, and listened to the wind move across the frozen water. It was peaceful, that kind of silence that almost hums in your ears. I remember thinking, this is perfect. Then I noticed a light across the bay. At first, I thought it was a reflection, maybe headlights behind me. But when I turned off my lamp, the glow was still there. One faint yellow square in the dark, a window. The other cabin, the one that wasn't supposed to be used. I stared for a long time. The light flickered once, like a candle caught in a draft, then went out. The next morning, I walked down to the dock. The ice stretched solid and white all the way to the other side. No footprints, no cracks. I could barely make out the second cabin through the fog. It looked smaller than mine, its roof sagging under snow, the chimney broken, the windows black. When I called the owner later that day, I told him someone might have broken in. He just said, "That cabin's been boarded up since the fire. There's no power. Maybe you saw ice reflecting." Then he hung up before I could ask more. Since the fire. I didn't like that phrasing. That night, the light came back. Same window. Same soft glow. Only this time, it didn't flicker. It pulsed, slow, rhythmic, like it was breathing. I stood at my window, staring across the ice. Every few seconds, the glow seemed to stretch, as if someone was walking back and forth behind the glass. I couldn't see a shape, just movement, faint and deliberate. I tried to record it on my phone, but the footage showed nothing, just black ice and darkness. Around midnight, I heard 3 dull thuds. They came from far across the bay, muffled but steady, like someone knocking on wood. Knock, knock, knock. Then silence. By morning, there were still no footprints, no sign of life. But something felt off. The air was colder inside than out. When I checked the thermostat, it was set to 72, but I could see my breath in the living room. I went out to chop wood near the edge of the forest, and that's when I saw it. On the far side of the bay, thin smoke rising from the chimney of the other cabin. There was no mistaking it this time. A thin gray column winding into the white sky. I grabbed my binoculars. Through the fog, I could see movement near the door. A flicker of black fabric. Someone stepped out for half a second, then vanished back inside. That's when I decided I was going to walk over. The owner didn't answer his phone, so I left a note on the counter, just in case. It was around noon when I stepped onto the ice. The surface groaned under my boots, but held solid. Each step echoed into the fog, the sound sharp and hollow. Halfway across, the wind died completely. The world went still. Even the air felt heavier, like the sky was holding its breath. Then I heard it again, 3 knocks, faint from somewhere ahead, each one slower than the last. I froze. It sounded close now, too close. I kept walking, and soon the cabin came into view. Smaller than I expected, the walls blackened with soot. The windows were frosted over except one, the same one that had glowed, and behind it, something moved. When I reached the porch, the door was already open a few inches. Snow had drifted inside across the floorboards. I called out, nothing, just the low moan of wind through the eaves. Inside, it was colder than outside. The walls were burned halfway up, and the smell of ash still lingered, like the fire had happened days ago, not years. In the corner stood a table covered in frost. On it, a candle still burned, the wick barely glowing, its wax long frozen in place. I walked closer and saw writing scratched into the wood beneath it. Welcome back. The words were etched deep, too deep for something old. The cuts were clean, fresh. That's when I heard movement behind me. Soft, slow, deliberate. A footstep on the wooden floor. I turned, nothing. But the air had changed. The cold felt alive, pressing against my skin. Then I saw it in the frost on the window. A handprint, fresh, wet, slowly fading, as if someone had just pulled their hand away. I ran outside, across the ice. Didn't stop until I reached the dock. When I turned back, the other cabin was dark again. No smoke, no light, just silence. I packed that night and left before sunrise. The road was half buried in snow, and my tires spun for miles before catching pavement. When I reached town, I finally got service. There was a voicemail from the cabin's owner. He sounded confused, or maybe scared. He said, "I checked the property yesterday. You must have gone to the wrong place. The second cabin burned down 15 years ago. There's nothing left but the foundation." I replayed it twice, then looked at the photo on my phone, the one I'd taken through the fog the day before. It clearly showed a cabin, roof, chimney, smoke rising from the fire inside. But when I zoomed in, past the window, past the frost, I could see a reflection. It wasn't me. It was someone standing in the doorway, smiling, holding a candle.